R&B legend R. Kelly was found guilty of sex trafficking and racketeering. This comes as the star has been on trial since August 18th. He'll be sentenced on May 4th. He could be facing more than 10 years. And let's break down the racketeering charges. Like, what does that make up of, right? And so there were 14 underlying acts, one of bribery, also child pornography. There were more than a dozen anonymous Jane Does, many of them who were underage, who all testified about the different illegal acts, either he performed on them or that he forced them to perform on others.
Global celebrity convicted on every count in the indictment. Racketeering.
Yeah, we can go ahead and roll with the latest coverage, Ben, and I'll circle back to you because this has been a saga that has been unfolding for quite some time.
Yes, let's take a look at it.
R&B superstar R. Kelly, once a national, global celebrity, convicted on every count in the indictment, racketeering and sex trafficking. He was found guilty on the first full day of deliberations. It was a quick verdict, which is always a bad sign for the defense.
Today's guilty verdict forever brands R. Kelly as a predator who used his fame and fortune to prey on the young, the vulnerable, and the voiceless for his own sexual gratification.
Kelly was found guilty of all 9 counts in the indictment, racketeering and sex trafficking, specifically arranging sexual encounters with underage victims across state lines. Prosecutors said the Grammy-winning R&B superstar used his fame and fortune to exploit the victims for his own sexual gratification, allegedly luring them into his world and keeping them there through fear and intimidation. Kelly did not testify in his own defense, instead allowing his lawyers to portray him as the victim of groupies, stalkers, and gold diggers. His attorneys accused the government of a rush to judgment and accused the media of running wild. They promised to appeal.
Of course, Mr. Kelly is disappointed. He was not anticipating this verdict because based on the evidence, why should he anticipate this verdict?
Attorney Gloria Allred represented 3 of the victims.
I have been practicing law for 47 years. During this time, I have pursued many sexual predators who have committed crimes against women and children. Of all the predators that I have pursued, however, Mr. Kelly is the worst.
Ben, I have a friend, Stephanie Bertini, who's a reporter. She was out there covering the verdict, and she said that each and every day there were a number of fans who are out there who were continuing to advocate for R. Kelly's innocence. Yeah. It is hard for some people because they grew up listening to R. Kelly's music. And in fact, some people say some of these fans may have also been victims of R. Kelly as well.
That's right. And, it is a testimony to he identified himself as the Pied Piper of R&B. And I think it is a testament to the fact that that's what he has done for so many people who still can't let go of the fact that no matter how much you love his music, we cannot allow this type of predator to exist in our community as Black people. But so many times we find ways of excusing and making excuses for these types of predators. And the people who are victimized are children and young people so many times. I'm glad to see this verdict, no matter how much I loved his music. I did grow up in his music. I mean, high school, I was singing I Believe I Can Fly with everybody else. But you know what? I'm glad this verdict is putting him where he belongs.
And I feel like it is a continuation of the Me Too movement, and that some of these women who finally, after decades, right, of being silent, of ignoring what happened to them, they've decided to have the courage to speak out against what happened to them. And so I feel like this is a continuation of the Me Too movement. We saw this in the Hollywood industry, in the film industry. We saw this roll out in different sports, right, where you had coaches. So in every facet of life, especially in this country, there have been historically men in positions of power who have abused that power and used it to lure women in, young women usually, and exploitate them for sexual acts. facts. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there are other instances that come to light in the music industry following this verdict of R. Kelly.
Oh, yeah. No, let's be sure. I think that there's a somewhat of a misconception that because of our plight as Black people in this country, it's impossible for us to be ourselves the oppressor and to use our position of power and influence and intimidation as a means of coercing people to do what we want. Racism and white supremacy in America does not preclude the possibility that we have some, I got to remember the rating of the show, some really low life people who will hurt our community if we do not address it. So I think we just have to have a fundamental eye, a clear eye on the difference between fandom and the entertainment industry in general, Georgia, right? You're right. They're going to find a lot more because when you give people power, that's when you see the real test of their character. And some people use their power to manipulate and to abuse. And I think this is the case with R. Kelly.
Well, and in R. Kelly's case, what we learned through the trial was there were so many accomplices from his manager to his bodyguard, his agent, his driver. There were so many people who were working on his team on him knew that even his driver, hey, can you go pick up this girl? And when you pick her up and you can see that she's 15, 16, 17 years old, or in some instances, if you watched the documentary that was done, you heard that they would go to pick a girl up from high school. So if you're picking a girl up from high school and she's getting in the car with the Letterman jacket, you know she's not old enough. And what did you do? Did you say anything to R. Kelly? Did you say, I'm not going to take her back to your room? Did you intervene?
That's right.
Did you blow the whistle to his manager, to her parents? What did you do? And so there's been so many accomplices that I also think should be held accountable, because if we as a society see a predator who is abusing young women in multiple states in this country, and we stand back and we turn our head as though we don't see what's happening right in front of our face, we are just as guilty.
Evil always has accomplices, right? You can't get away with a lot of this stuff on your own, especially not when you're moving with that amount of money and that amount of power. And therein lies the opportunity for the maximum abuse. And, the framing of the judgment against them, Georgia, I'm not one to cast, my own sense of morality on other people, with one great exception: consensual adults. And for everybody who is still caping for R. Kelly, let me tell you something. Y'all are on the side of a pedophile.
Ben, have you been following a story this morning as well?
Oh, Lord. Now I have to pull myself out of that and actually talk about some other ones that are the national stage in particular, the Republican Party playing games with America. We are facing the threat of a shutdown yet again, and this is a manufactured crisis because the Republican Party is refusing to increase the debt limit. Now, to be sure, the debt limit is connected to all of the spending that has occurred already. And if you think about the spending that has occurred already, you cannot have this conversation without talking about Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts for the rich. That's why we have to increase the debt ceiling in the first place. And this is the game. This is the kabuki theater that I was talking about. Here are Republicans yet again, knowing full well that they are going to have to fund this government. They're playing a game, threatening another shutdown. And we go through this every so many years. Let's take a listen to this clip of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell as he explains why he feels that we should not increase the debt limit, even though it is a standard normal course of procedures for our government. Let's take a look.
Republicans have cautioned them for 2 months now that we will not help them implement this reckless $6 trillion spending plan by raising the debt ceiling. It's time that they took it seriously, that they funded the government to keep it open past next week, and that they avoid any kind of default on our debt next month.
Well, we'll be watching what Senator McConnell proposes.
For more than 2 months now, Senate Republicans have been completely clear about how this process will play out. So let me make it abundantly clear one more time. We will support a clean continuing resolution that will prevent a government shutdown, get disaster relief to Louisiana, help properly vetted Afghan refugees who put themselves on the line for America, and support the Iron Dome assistance for our ally, Israel. We will not provide Republican votes for raising the debt limit.
And so there he's trying to position himself. The first voice we heard was Senator Tom Cotton, and the second voice was that of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is trying to position himself as reasonable, saying, we'll do this, we will do X, we will do Y, we will do Z, but we can't do any of those things if the government shuts down. And therein lies the game that they play every so many years. And when they talk about the debt ceiling, we have to tie it. It is inextricably linked to the 2017 tax cuts of Donald Trump, because we would not be dealing with this exacerbated debt if not for those tax breaks.
This is what I want to know. So researchers at Brown University say that we spent nearly $6 trillion during the war in Afghanistan.
That's right.
So if we can find $6 trillion to just throw away at war, a war that many would say we didn't even win, why is it that we're sitting here trying to act like we can't find the money, we don't have the money? Why are we sitting here acting like we have to shut down our government? The money is there. And if it's not there, the decision to continue to go into debt, I would prioritize going into debt to ensure the quality of life for Americans all across this country versus a $6 trillion bill for a war in Afghanistan. We didn't even understand why we were there for 20 years. So if we can find $6 trillion, if we can justify going into debt, even if that was $6 trillion that we didn't necessarily have, but that maybe drove us further into debt. If we can prioritize and justify that, why are we sitting here basically playing Russian roulette with the lives of American citizens? It's not fair. Yeah. And I think that what we have seen over the last 2 decades, and Trump playing a huge role in this, is that we have administrations who continue to fail at making good priority lists. The American people and our quality of life should be at the top of that list.
One of the things that Speaker Pelosi, I've heard her say that Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that I actually agree with. She says, show me your budget, you show me your values and your priorities. And you asked the fundamental question, Georgia, how is it that we have trillions for war? But not only do we not have enough money to feed the poor, ostensibly, we don't have enough money to run our government. So I would ask the audience this question: what good is this government, especially under the control of people like Mitch McConnell, bad faith actors in general? What good is that government if it can't even support itself? Why are they ruling over us and they don't even have their own house in order?
Yeah, for a second there, I thought you were reciting some Tupac lyrics. Got money for war, but can't feed the poor.
Feed the poor.
I digress, but definitely a Tupac fan. And even then, and that was in the 90s. This was still a fundamental issue that we are a country that will prioritize going into other countries overseas where we have no jurisdiction, no authority, and calling ourselves, getting their house in order. Yet and still, we have people who are living in tents all across America. Right. We have bridges that are collapsing. We have children who do not have adequate education because of the infrastructure within their school. There are still kids in rural America who don't have access to the internet. So how do we justify spending $6 trillion at war? And I'm sure that wasn't just paid out in cash. I'm sure some of that was collected in debt. So how do we justify that? Yet and still, we are not living the American dream here in America. Right. Many of us.
That's right. And as you go down the list, I'm thinking of Flint, Michigan, still dealing with lead pipes, right? There's all parts of this empire that's crumbling from within, and we have leaders, politicians, senators who are drunk with folly and their bigotry, playing games with the future of this country. See, Georgia, I can understand the game that they play with our lives because they've been playing with our lives since they stole us and brought us here, right? But they don't even value the life of their own empire. And so we'll discuss that and a whole lot more before I go off on a tangent, because it really represents to me the full abdication of their responsibility as the government if they can't even function. And this is a game that's being forced on us. It's an unnecessary game. It is a kabuki theater. We increase the debt limit on a regular basis, and Mitch McConnell knows that, but he needs something to throw to his constituents, his bad faith actors that are supporting it.
Well, and I'll add this before wrapping. I think this is why you see so many people who have started to invest in alternative economies. You have people who are looking at Bitcoin and, all of these new ways to invest or to monetize money, really, and so these different economies, I think for the people who want to prioritize the people, these things are going to become more and more prominent in the future. I think that if the administration, if our current government structure cannot restore trust within the American people, you are going to see more and more people divesting in our current economy and looking at alternative ways or even community aid. Because one thing I'll say that we saw here in Minneapolis after the civil unrest is the community realized we have everything that we need. We can take care of each other if we come together and we work together. And so while a lot of people are going to the government for, quote unquote, a handout, it won't be needed when people start putting that faith and that trust and giving that authority within the communities that they live in.
Yeah. And Georgia, at the 8:30 segment, we're going to dig into the failure, not only in terms of the infrastructure, right, but the failure as it pertains to COVID-19 and these schools, right? The schools are crumbling, but yet we're sending them into these schools during a pandemic, and we're acting surprised when students are getting sick and teachers are dying. So we're going to cover that at the 8:30 hour. But what you just said was so critical. Right. We are really faced with some life and death decisions that are being all but dismissed by the very people who benefit from the power that we grant them. And I just simply feel that if we don't understand the need to create that secondary path, we have a government that has failed us. We are going to have to look at new technologies, new currencies, new ways of organizing, new ways of thinking, because if this government is going to fail us, then we, the people, are going to have to do it ourselves.
Absolutely. And, when I talk about the erosion of trust, we saw this play out yesterday. I was at a press conference the current mayor of Minneapolis was holding to address the outbreak of gun violence after George Floyd was murdered. The police say because of the defund the police movement, there were a lot of officers who retired or filed lawsuits against the city. But needless to say, they're understaffed. And so they are blaming that understaffing as a result of the gun violence that we're seeing. Since there's not enough cops out there, there's more gun violence. But really, we know that there was gun violence issues in Minneapolis back in the 90s. You can just do a quick Google search of Murderapolis, and you will see that the gun violence issues in Minneapolis existed well before George Floyd was killed. Right. So this isn't a symptom or a result of what happened here a year and a half ago. This is an ongoing issue that now is escalating and getting worse because of the current conditions of police. But yesterday, the mayor, who is, up for re-election, decided to hold a press conference to give people an update on where he stands on public safety. And so, yes, Minneapolis is a city that remains torn. Should we defund the police? Should we abolish the police? Should the police department expand and be a department of public safety? These are all things that are still for debate. And there is a vote that's coming up, a charter amendment. And you can vote yes or you can vote no. And the language has gone to the Supreme Court. And it's been this saga. But one thing that remains constant is that the people of Minneapolis do not have faith or trust in the leadership. I want you guys to take a look at what happened during the mayor's press conference yesterday. And this was supposed to be exclusive for press only. Take a look.
And we all agree that not every response requires an officer with a gun to respond. We can have a unique skill set responding to the unique experiences on the ground. Mental health responders or social workers are prime examples. And by the way, you do not need a charter amendment in order to accomplish those things.
I think that it's important for you to be careful to stand in front of God's house and make promises next to an anointed member of our community as if there's going to be a great change. That's not going to happen. We're going to see you again in the next some years if you elected, making the same promise. You can't keep saying the same thing and doing something different to better your future when you retire. Because when you retire, your house going to be so big, your kids going to be together, but we don't get a chance to retire because we got to dodge bullets and kick ass every day just to get a job. Where's the job market at, man? Ain't nobody. I didn't interrupt you when you was talking. I respect you, and I'm hoping that you'll do the same for me, right? So it would be a great thing to take a look at. Where's the jobs, man? Because if I'm working, I ain't got time to shoot nobody. If I'm working, I ain't got time to sell dope. If I'm working, I got to take care of my kids, my grandmama. I'm worried about my auntie now that I ain't seen in years. Where is the jobs? Look at Broadway, man. When you look at Broadway, it's toe up. You know why? Because you have guys or different nationalities that come and boat up the community. All they want is money from us. All they want is our cash or what's on our credit card. And get the fuck out of their store because they think we're trying to steal something. The things that you have put on a plateau is totally obsolete from the real structure that this ground needs. You out of place. You need to be somewhere in a raw community talking that type of talk. In this community.
So this press conference took place in front of North Minneapolis Church. It's a pillar in the community. And the usual Black leaders who support the mayor put this together, and this man, and there was also a member of the new Black Panther Party who derailed his press conference. He was there to, give out information about his plan for the public safety system. And the citizens, the residents of Minneapolis are tired of the political rhetoric. Her name was Angela Williams, the other woman who derailed the press conference, and she basically called him out saying, you're trying to finesse the Black vote. You're here at a predominantly Black church to say all of the right things to finesse. And those were her words. I quote her. She said to finesse the Black vote.
Yeah, no. There's really not much more to say than what that brother said in the clip, Georgia. Thank you for bringing that. And because he was speaking truth to power, right? Very flat footed and looking at, and I recall Mayor Fry, I recall his walk of shame because he decided to show up at a George Floyd protest last year. And in the midst of a full-on confrontation with the police, if my memory serves me correct, he wanted a kumbaya moment with the people. But no, sir, you represent the state power. And so, of course, you're in the wrong place if you're going to try to stand in front of a black church that has been a beacon of hope for the black community in the face of white supremacy and capitalism and say that you're going to change everything for the better. No. We've heard that too many times. And I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. We're not here for that this time. No, not in the year of our Lord 20 and 21.
Well, and I think it's a microcosm of what we see even on a national stage. I mean, how many times have you seen a politician come into the black community and make all these promises? We saw Biden do the same thing when he was trying to get elected as well. And I feel like that was part of the reason why he pulled Kamala in, was to have an even stronger pull on the black vote. But the black community is tired of their vote being finessed. We're tired of these empty promises. And I thought, the rest of the people that were there for the press conference, the rest of the media, they were extremely frustrated because they wanted their time to be able to ask the mayor their questions. And I understand that. And so maybe this wasn't the appropriate place. But if this isn't the appropriate place to have this conversation and for the community to speak for themselves directly to the powers that be, where are those spaces? Where are we creating spaces for community to express what that man just expressed? Because it wasn't a lie. Every single thing that he said had truth.
That's right. Those type of spaces are incredibly invaluable, and they're exceedingly rare because we have seen, in my experience, Georgia, and I'm sure you could speak about that a lot of times people don't want our black voices. They want our black faces and our black spaces. They would be more than happy to show up at our churches, but don't ask any real questions. They'll be more than happy to show up on your show, but don't ask any real questions. And so we're cultivating a space wherein everyone who comes on and speaks with us will be held accountable at that level, simply because who are we here to serve? Are we here to make politicians comfortable, or are we here to serve the people? And I think that's the dichotomy we saw in that clip you just shared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Minneapolis, I feel like, remains an epicenter for police accountability. And the world is watching, trying to determine what direction we're going to forward. Minneapolis has a huge opportunity to lay out the blueprint for what policing and public safety could be, and how it could be more equitable, and how it could foster a greater environment for accountability. But unfortunately, I think that due to the uptick in gun violence, people are now very scared to try something radical, to try something new when it comes to policing. They're scared because what happens when we don't have police, and people don't know what that looks like. And for so many, for their entire lives, police have been the ones that have protected them. And most people do trust authority, right? And so, it has been very interesting to follow this as it has evolved, and now to see where it is today. That's and right. to see that potentially Minneapolis could this window to create a blueprint that would change policing across America.
I would offer, with the last few minutes that we have, that we should really consider the nature of the situation. These are our cities. If there are cities, they should reflect us. The leadership should reflect us, but more importantly, the people who patrol our streets should reflect us. And we have been pouring money and taxpayer dollars and lives on the altar of a protection racket. But we're out of time, and I will try to unpack that throughout the rest of the show, Georgia. But you've been stirring up some essential questions this morning, and I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for On the Clock. Keep it here for more on the Benjamin Dixon Show.